Hello, Ken Spriggs here with a review and an overview of the second edition of the Elegoo Jupiter. It's called a special edition of the SE. A year ago, they released the Jupiter, the original Jupiter, which is their largest one to date of their resin 3D printers. I did purchase one, and I've had it for about a year now. And this is a new, really redesigned version of the original. They went back and made a lot of changes, which I'm really happy about. I really like the newer version. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, so here are my four printers. You can see right over there is the Mars. I don't have that set up right now, but I wanted to give kind of a size comparison. So here obviously is the original Elegoo Jupiter. Came out a year ago. Very large, very heavy. It's a nice printer, but they really redesigned it, and I really love the way they've slimmed it down and went back to their original acrylic cover, which I prefer. When I first got my very first Mars in 2020, I was comparing Elegoo to the Anycubic, and the Anycubic had the folding door and the doors opening up, and I read a lot of different reviews and watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and I just really didn't like the idea of the door because it doesn't seal very well, so it tends to allow the resin fumes to come out, whereas these do not. The very first Mars, Saturn, all of them, it doesn't matter if you have a filter, if you have a fan blowing, you have the new filters they put in them, it doesn't make a difference. Nothing is coming out of this to the bottom where that seal goes. You don't even need a rubber seal around it because it's over a lip, and the fumes tend to rise anyway. And people have often said, well, the fumes are building up. Nothing's building up, they're inert. It's no more than the fumes building up in a bottle. But anyway, that's my soapbox for today. But that's why I love the covers. Just pull it off, get in there, do your thing. There's nothing else in the way. You don't have to worry about it. So for example, like the Jupiter, you have to get in around all this other stuff in order to get the things you want, get everything out. So you're working through a narrow, it's not narrow, you can certainly get in here and do it, but it really is over designed for what they need, obviously, since the new Jupiter, exact same build plate size, exact same build area, exact same everything. All the specs are exactly the same, except obviously it is much further reduced, and when you take that cover off, it's even smaller of a profile, whereas you don't take anything off of the Jupiter. You simply open the door and then work from there. Likewise, this weighs about 88 pounds, which is very heavy. This is half the weight at 44 pounds. So definitely superior. And then you can see obviously the difference between the Saturn and either of the Jupiters. It's just dwarfed by it. So, okay. So they did put some handles onto the acrylic of the new one, so you can take it off. And there's also some openings in the back, which I'll show you in a moment, for some other features, which is really cool. I like what they've done there. So let me go ahead and take off the cover, and we'll take a look at the inside. All right, and there is the inner parts without the cover on it. So you can see how way streamlined it is. And let me go ahead and open up the door of the original Jupiter. I mean, they both do the same thing. They're both good printers, obviously. They're both going to do the same build size and everything. It's just that their original one was way over-engineered than what it needed to be. So they went back, obviously, a year later and just redesigned the whole thing. Exactly the same specs, but just make it a far, more streamlined device. Which, honestly, I'm not sure why they didn't do that originally, why they didn't take the time. There are other models, like the Mars and the Saturn. They have come out with different versions that are slightly different, but overall the design is the same. the size is the same, that kind of thing. So really like the great improvements that they've made, but I wish they had done that initially and not over-engineered it to start with. So let me show you. Now it looks like that one's a little higher, but it really isn't, because you have the vat at this level, whereas it's much lower. This whole bottom part, again, way too big for what they need, versus a smaller profile for this one. And so it does have the exact same build proportions, as far as, you know, the build plate's the same size, the height's the same size, everything's the same size. Your display screen is the same size, all of that stuff. All right, so let's take a look at the new acrylic cover. So what they've done is they've put some openings in the back. They have this here. This is designed to go over top of the pump, which I'll show you in a moment. I guess that fits over a slot in the back too. I'll take a look. This is a removable plate. I'm assuming that you can put a fan in there or a hose or something if you wanted to. You remove it in the inside from Allen wrenches, take it off, and then you can put that in. Of course, it has two handles that are attached from the inside, so you can lift it because it is bigger. But other than that, it is still just a one-piece acrylic cover, which I definitely prefer, because once it goes down over all these things and it seals over top of it, you're not going to get any leaks or anything. I'm just looking back here. Yeah, you have this part that it goes over, and then you have the pump that it goes over. All right, so let's take a look at the streamlined versions of the build plate and the vat, because they've certainly changed those a lot as well. All right, so here are the two build plates, and just to kind of show you, well, it'd be easier if I did it. The build plate part. Okay. Same exact size. They're identical. They, again, way over-engineered this one. Very heavy, very clunky, a lot of metal. I can hold it in one hand, but it's fairly weighty. So definitely more awkward to use. But then you have this one, definitely much lighter. Didn't need all that over-engineering. So somebody went back and said, let's just make this simpler. So all you have is this mechanism here. And it's kind of cool. It actually slides over this plate here underneath this. So you have that groove. And then you have grooves in the aluminum, which go over top of those. So it's very simple. All you do is slide it in. It only goes in one way. And you tighten this down. That's it. Nothing else to adjust. So I'm assuming everything is all self-leveled. You don't have to worry about what you have to do on this, or even the Saturn. The Saturn had to be tighten and loosen a couple of bolts to make it fit on a certain thing. So this must be self-leveling. I'll have to play and see. I don't know if you still have to loosen some things. I'm going to guess probably not, but I think it makes it a lot easier. And also what they did, which is kind of cool, I'll have to see how it affects it, but they have this new diamond pattern, or whatever you want to call it. That's pretty cool. So I'm wondering how that's going to help with parts coming off and not. I mean, the idea is you want the part to stick, so it does have some grooves for it to get a bite, but you don't want it to to fall off either. So hopefully that'll help with adhesion to the build plate, because that's often a problem that you have where it doesn't adhere in the first place. So I'm doing this all with one hand. Well, a little bit of help there. And one thing I did notice about the original Jupiter, which I'll show show you here is, sorry for the darkness there. All right, so initially you have to tighten these things here, all four of them, to get these spring-loaded things to be the right tension. And then I did notice when using this that you cannot tighten this down super tight. You just want to snug it down and that's it. Because somehow what it was doing is warping something and things just would not stick to the build plate. So I fussed with it several times when I first started using it, and finally, I think it even says it in the instructions. So you tighten this, you slide this in, and then you just snug it down. You do not tighten it as tight as you can, or that's going to be a problem. This one, however, it goes on one way. You're just tightening this so that this plate's in place. So I don't think that'll be the same problem with that. So, okay. So different like that. Still have the dual rails and the one threaded part down there. So same mechanism as far as moving it up and down. Should get the same smooth movement, so we don't have any Z wobble, as people say, with it wobbling when it's going up and down. All right, so then let me show you the vats and how they've improved that as well. All right, so similarly, you have the vat from the original Jupiter. I can pick it up with one hand, but it is really, really hefty. It's very thick. It's got that extra there. The version on the original just had a cap that clicked down into there. The bottle was inverted, and then it's supposed to come in and just fill it by gravity. It has these two aluminum handles to pick it up with. And so it's definitely more awkward to be able to pour it out and pour out the resin. So give me a second and I'll go ahead and show you the other one here. Let me put this one back. All right, so the new one doesn't have handles on the top. It just has these two grooves in the side. You have them over here too. Much easier to pick up with one hand. I mean, certainly I would use two hands if I wasn't sitting here filming it, but you don't have that extra part in the back for the autofill. You have a nice little spout right here, which would probably be a lot easier to clean than the typical spout in the other ones. So very, very cool. I definitely like that. It still has the 4 bolts that go down into slots, so it goes into just one spot. And then another great advantage is they both have the screws at the top, which go in and hold it in place. But the problem with the one for the original is you got these bars in the way. So you got to go around them, get it into, sorry, as you can see, get it into there, and then you have to reach around through this and get it tightened down. So again, not the best of engineering. And you also have, you know, a more limited space to work with when you're doing that. So overall, just really, really happy with how they redesigned it. It's redesigned so much that it looks like this is very shallow, which I'm assuming is the same exact volume. And it has that little max mark in the back for how high you want it to go. So very cool. All right, so then finally, let's take a look at the added features. The original Jupiter had the same filter. You have this filter that plugs into a USB port, and it has I guess a fan that circulates. It's supposed to purify the air, I suppose. I don't know that it does much of that. I'm not that worried about it. But a new feature which I really like a lot is the pump. This is a pump. So this also plugs down into a USB. It has 2 screw holes in it that you can screw it down. So once I finish setting it up, I'll screw it down. And on the back, it has the little part that goes through this opening. So this slides down over top of it. And then your hoses come out in the back. Let me show you if I can get a hold of this. You have hoses attached to it and little wired, these tubes go down into your bottle of resin. So I'm assuming this only works with a large bottle of resin. Obviously, it's pretty big. And the cap that screws onto it. And there's 2 of these. So I'm not sure. I guess you could have a spare if you wanted to switch out the different colors or something. But all of the hoses then and the wiring comes out of the back and it comes through this opening right here. So it doesn't interfere with it sealing up and being able to pump it. So what it does is it actually has a mechanism that goes down into the vat, this other mechanism. So what it does is when it gets to a certain height, it will then pump in more resin. I think this is where the resin comes out of. So it pumps it out of the bottle, puts it into the vat, and keeps the vat filled as it's running. But a great feature, another feature it does, which I think is really cool, is it pumps it from the vat back out into the bottle. So you can reverse it. So when you want to clean out your vat, rather than pulling the vat and having to dump it into, your filter and everything else, it simply just can suck it out. And then once it gets to a certain level, you just lift up the plate and let it pull down where the pump is. I have to play with it. I think this has to go down, I assume. But I'll have to play with it and see how it works. But I think that's really, really cool. And I think that'll make it a lot more convenient for removing it, in addition to the vat itself being considerably lighter and less awkward to be able to use and be able to clean up when you need to. So, all right. So overall, really, really cool. All right, so there you go. So overall, a definite improvement in the second version of the Jupiter, the special edition, with all the same features and even an additional feature of the pump that pumps the resin into it from the bottle and puts it back into the bottle as well when you're done. Very, very cool. I'm really glad they redesigned it. Right now, the price on these is the original Jupiter is selling for $890, which originally I believe it was $1,200. I paid $1,000 for it a year ago. The new Jupiter SE is $700 directly from them. So you might find different prices elsewhere. Obviously, I'm going to be selling my original one at a very reduced price. So putting that out there on eBay, since I don't need the original. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, it works, but if they had taken more time to really engineer it properly to what they released now a year later, I would have been much happier with the first version of it. And it definitely fits in with, obviously, the Mars, the Saturn, and the Jupiter. So, but no harm, no foul. I'm really happy with this new one. I think it's going to definitely be a lot easier to be using it for the larger prints that I want to do. So, all right, so I'm really happy with the redesign of the Jupiter, and I think it's really going to make it a lot easier to use to make these larger prints. I'm not going to show any test prints or anything on it in this video. I don't see any reason why it would work any differently than the original one. I just wanted to go over how it was redesigned and how they changed it quite a bit. But I will be using it in the near future. I'm probably going to be printing a version of the Mandalorian and Little Grogu that I got from my original file that I did for my 3D printed version of the N1 Starfighter. I believe that was from gambody.com. I'll have to go back and check. But they had a really nice seated figure in the cockpit and a little Grogu that looks nicer than the one in the model from Revell. So I'm continuing to work on that, and I'll be posting new videos here in the next few weeks. And I'll probably be 3D printing those figures in order to go in and scale them up a little bit. So, all right. Well, thank you to all my new subscribers, and stay tuned.